Decoded.
Hey there, and welcome back to Book Decoded.
Hello. Ready for another exploration?
Absolutely. Get ready to have your nose opened in the best way possible, naturally. Today, we're cracking open Harold McGee's brilliant book, Nosedive, a field guide to the world's smells.
Ah, yes. A fantastic choice.
Trust me, this isn't, your average science read. McGee has this incredible way of connecting the dots between what we sniff every day and some truly mind-blowing science, history, even like cosmic wonder.
It's that blend that makes it so compelling. He takes this everyday sense smell and just reveals this whole universe hidden inside it.
Exactly. We're about to uncover some surprising connections that will totally change how you think about, well, that next inhale.
He pushes us beyond just recognizing a scent, doesn't he?
Yeah.
To understanding its fundamental building blocks.
Yeah, and the fascinating ways those blocks link seemingly unrelated things.
Definitely.
And speaking of fascinating, I have to tell you about this bit in the book that just floored me.
Oh, yeah. Which part?
McGee describes this lunch he had at St. John in London with Fergus Henderson and Trevor Gulliver.
Ah, St. John.
Yeah.
Legendary.
Right. So he tries grouse for the first time, and this first bite, he's just completely overcome, couldn't even speak.
Wow. What was it, do you think? Just the flavor?
Well, he says it wasn't just tasty, it was this intense, like, deeply gamey flavor with this almost bitter edge, and it triggered this really unexpected emotional response. He was totally absorbed by it.
Interesting. So more than just taste.
Yeah. And then Fergus, with this knowing little smile, just says, of course, your first grouse.
Perfect.
It really shows you how a single smell, a single taste experience can be so profound, right?
Especially when it's new, outside our usual form of reference. Makes you think about all those other overlooked moments.
Totally.
And that anecdote perfectly sets up a key idea in the book, that even in just, eating, there are layers of meaning in the aromas.
Yeah, it leads into that really surprising stuff he explored.
The unexpected flavor echoes.
Yes, between completely different foods. He talked about Parmesan cheese sometimes tasting like pineapple.
Right. And raw oysters like cucumber, sherry like soy sauce.
Even corn tortillas having a hint of chestnut honey. It's wild.
It is wild. I mean, what on earth could link a hard-aged cheese to a sweet tropical fruit, chemically speaking?
Exactly. It makes you think about the underlying chemical architecture of these foods.
What volatile compounds could they possibly share that our brains interpret in such similar ways?
It's like there's a secret molecular language of flavor,
Definitely. And it gets even stranger, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. He also mentions connections to things that aren't even edible.
Like the smell of the seaside in green tea.
Yeah, and horse stables in certain wines. And get this, sweaty feet in some Swiss cheeses.
Ugh. Okay, maybe not the most appealing comparison, but scientifically fascinating.
Right.
These more unusual comparisons really highlight that our sense of smell isn't always about these neat, obvious categories.
It's about recognizing shared molecules.
Shared volatile molecules, yeah. Even if the overall context is completely different, which raises that fundamental question.
How do we go from smelling these complex mixtures of molecules
to identifying a single recognizable scent?
Yeah. Which brings us to this really interesting concept McGee touches on, drawing from Sartre.
About the smell as a singular thing?
Yeah. Even though it's made up of many molecules, we experience it as one single thing, almost like it has its own individual spirit tied to whatever it's coming from. And he illustrates this with his own experience, with a cheese.
Ah, tell us more about that. What happened?
So he smelled this cheese before seeing it, right? And he got this wave of unpleasant associations, morning breath, rotting vegetables, just, not good. But the weird thing was, when he actually tasted the cheese, that initial awful smell seemed to fade.
Ah, interesting. Why do you think that happened?
Well, that's the puzzle he presents, isn't it?
Right. It's a great example of how complex our olfactory perception is. Even though the cheese contained molecules triggering those negative associations, the act of tasting brought in a whole new set of sensory inputs. The texture, the other flavors, they likely influenced how his brain interpreted those initial smell molecules.
So the context changed everything.
Exactly. The context in which we experience a smell can dramatically alter our perception of it.
Okay, so if smells are these complex molecular cocktails, how do scientists actually figure out what's in them? This is where the cool tools come in. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. McGee talks about the gas chromatograph,
Right.
which is basically like a detective for smells.
Yeah.
It lets scientists take a complex mixture of volatile
And
molecules.
the smelly ones.
Yeah, the ones that easily evaporate, and separate them out so they can be individually identified.
How does that work exactly?
It works based on this principle of volatility, how easily different molecules evaporate, which is related to their boiling point.
Okay. He uses a simple example with alcohol and water, right? Can you break that down?
Sure. Think about it like this. Alcohol evaporates more readily than water, has a lower boiling point.
Okay.
So if you heat a mixture of the two gently, the vapor that comes off first will have a higher concentration of alcohol.
Got it.
The gas chromatograph essentially does this with all the different scent molecules in a sample, separating them based on their volatility so they can be measured and identified. It's pretty neat.
And he connects this to something many people might know about, how whiskey is made.
Exactly. Distillers use a similar process, just on a larger scale, in a still.
Right.
They heat a fermented liquid, like beer or mash, which has relatively low alcohol content. And they collect the vapors that evaporate at a lower temperature because, again, they're richer in alcohol. Then they condense those vapors back into liquid.
To create a much higher proof spirit.
Precisely. It's a practical application of separating volatile compounds based on boiling points.
So thanks to science, we can really get down to the molecular level of smells. But then McGee takes us on this incredible leap.
Ah, yes. All the way out to the cosmos.
To talk about where these very molecules came from.
This is where things get truly mind-blowing. He reminds us that the chemical elements that make up everything,
Including us, including smells.
including all those scent molecules, yeah, they were created inside stars, these incredibly hot billion-degree furnaces in space.
It's staggering.
The very first stars started with just hydrogen and helium, maybe a tiny bit of lithium.
Right.
And through nuclear fusion, they forged almost all the other elements on the periodic table. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur.
Yeah.
The works.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that scale. And then he mentions interstellar molecules, these molecules just floating around in space between the stars.
What's astonishing is that scientists, astrochemists, have identified over 200 different molecules out there in interstellar clouds. And some of those very same molecules are ones we detect with our sense of smell every single day. Simple alcohols, aldehydes, esters. It creates this incredible, almost unbelievable link between the vastness of the universe and our everyday experience of smelling something.
So when I sniff my coffee, I could be inhaling molecules that were literally formed in some ancient exploding star billions of years ago.
In a very real way, yes. The atoms certainly were. And these simple molecular building blocks can form wherever the conditions are right, including in those cold, dark interstellar clouds.
How do they even detect them out there?
Astrochemists analyze the electromagnetic radiation light, infrared, radio waves coming from stars and galaxies. Different molecules absorb or emit specific frequencies, creating a kind of spectral fingerprint.
So they can read the chemical composition.
Exactly. It's like they're smelling the chemical composition of distant objects across the cosmos. It's amazing.
That is an amazing thought. And it leads to this idea McGee presents about these elementary molecules and our own planet.
The contrast he draws.
He points out that volatiles found on asteroids, things that apparently smell like cheese, fruit, or honey, are quite basic and universal, formed abiotically.
But here on Earth,
Here on Earth, those same or similar molecules are often byproducts of more complex biological processes, residues of life.
this contrast really gives you a fresh perspective, doesn't it?
Totally. Imagine if we encountered the smells of earth, cooked eggs, decaying vegetables, vinegar, alcohol, after experiencing these primordial cosmic aromas.
Right. Suddenly, these everyday smells might remind us of those initial dust clouds and the very first atomic interactions.
It completely flips how we think about our olfactory landscape.
It really does. And then he brings it back down to the early Earth, doesn't he? Talking about the Hadean Eon.
Yeah, that incredibly violent period. Constant asteroid impacts, intense heat.
A pretty rough place for complex molecules to survive, let alone thrive. Things were constantly being broken apart.
But what was crucial for our planet developing its own flavor, as McGee playfully puts it?
Was the arrival of water.
Right, likely delivered by meteorites and comets over millions of years, forming the early oceans.
And why was water such a game changer? Why was it so important for this flavoring up?
Well, you explain it better.
Well, liquid water is just an amazing solvent. It can dissolve and mix with a huge variety of molecules.
Like a universal mixer.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Allowing them to interact and react with each other much more easily than they could as gases or solids.
So the early oceans became this vast primordial soup.
Exactly. Dissolving minerals from the crust, gases from the atmosphere, and potentially even incorporating more complex organic molecules raining down from space in meteorites during the later Archean eon.
It was a critical step in the chemical evolution of our planet, setting the stage for life.
Absolutely. Without liquid water, it's hard to imagine how things would have progressed.
Now, McGee also dives into specific ancient smells, and one that really stuck with me is sulfur.
Sulfur. Can't miss that one.
He describes volcanic smells as a direct connection to what the planet was like before life really took hold and changed the atmosphere.
Yeah, that pungent, often acrid smell of sulfur from volcanoes. Mostly sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. It's a powerful reminder of Earth's early, much more volcanic and chemically different atmosphere.
And potent stuff, too.
Oh, definitely. Even small amounts of hydrogen sulfide are toxic. And major volcanic eruptions like Kilauea or that Icelandic one, Bararbunga, can release enormous quantities. He mentions the smell reaching Norway.
Incredible. But he also connects sulfur to the very beginnings of life, which I found so interesting.
Yes, that's a key point. Sulfur played a vital role in how early life forms obtained energy. It was an energy source before oxygen was abundant.
How do you know that?
He talks about ancient rocks, over 3.5 billion years old, from places like Australia. They show evidence of iron and sulfides linked to volcanic activity, and also minerals like pyrite fool's gold, which is iron sulfide, likely formed with microbial help.
Wow. So life was already using sulfur way back then.
Seems like it. McGee even mentions these fascinating microbial communities called sulfuretta.
Sulfur?
Yeah, where different types of microbes work together, almost like a team, to extract energy from various sulfur compounds. One microbe's waste product is another's food source.
Like a little ecosystem based on sulfur?
Exactly. You still see similar communities today in extreme environments like the hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. Octopus Spring is one he mentions.
So that sometimes unpleasant sulfur smell, it has this deep, ancient connection to the very origins of life on Earth.
It really does. It's not just a volcanic byproduct. It's woven into the fabric of early biochemistry.
It's just incredible how McGee weaves together these seemingly unrelated ideas, from that intense first taste of grouse to the cosmic origins of molecules and stars and the ancient role of sulfur in early life.
It gives you this profound appreciation for the interconnectedness of everything we smell, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And what we've discussed today is really just scratching the surface, isn't it?
Oh, completely. The book is packed with so much more. The smells of plants, animals, cooking, decomposition, even our own bodies. It's a huge field guide.
And it really makes you think differently about your own everyday encounters with smells. It's not just about good or bad anymore.
No, it's about this incredible molecular history and the kind of hidden stories these scents are telling.
Yeah.
Which maybe leads to a final thought for our listeners. How might understanding this deep history of smells, from the birth of stars to the earliest life on our planet, how might that enrich your appreciation for the food you eat and the world around you?
Definitely something to chew on, or I should say sniff on.
Hey, nice one.
Well, that's all the time we have for this particular exploration into Harold McGee's Nosedive. Thanks so much for joining us on Book Decoded.
My pleasure. Always fascinating.
And until next time, keep those noses engaged.